Hi, welcome back to the Colorblind Architect Podcast. I'm your host, David Clayton, and this morning I'm sitting in a beautiful park. Obviously in my car, but it's amidst a bunch of trees. I can see them from my car. Um, the sunrise is actually really nice. It's coming through the leaves of the trees and casting all kinds of really cool shadows on the ground, and um, it's little moments like that that can really make you smile. It can really remind you of what a beautiful planet we live on. And so, why do I bring that up? I just wanted to say again, we need to be a lot more grateful for what we have. We live in an extraordinary time. And even though 2020 has been an absolute horrible year relative to like a normal year, we don't have that many disasters or that many crazy things happening. But it's still really not that bad. I mean, you consider we still have the nicest living conditions of any country on earth, and we have less poverty today than at any time in the history of the world. Um, we have plentiful food, which, fingers crossed, right? I mean, with the pandemic, that really put food supplies at risk. Currently, it doesn't seem like that's a problem just yet. Hopefully, that doesn't become a real problem. But let's be grateful that for right now, it seems like food supplies are sufficient. Um, let's see. We've got awesome technology. We've got this wonderful thing called the internet. Um, and at least where I live, anytime I want to go enjoy some nature, I can just go. I can go out into a park. I can go up into the mountains. I can get a little taste um, of happiness for a moment. I can breathe in some fresh air. That's exactly what I did yesterday. Um, yesterday was, of course, was Sunday. After we got to participate in our church services, which it was a little bit weird because we're doing it a little bit differently because of the pandemic. But this was the first week where we went into our newly renewed weekly services, and I can't tell you how excited that makes me feel because since since late March, we have been doing home church, which home church is great. Um, I mean, after all, you kind of get to wear pajamas and you sit there and you worship together as a family. But um, there's something different when you get to be with your friends and neighbors in a congregation, singing hymns and partaking of the holy emblems and remembering the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. Now, I bring this up not to try to proselyte or anything. I bring this up because, as you might have seen my episode on rom-coms and redemption, um, redemption's a very important concept in Christianity. It's also a very important concept in Islam and Judaism. Basically, the faiths that descend from Abraham are very much focused on redemption. Now, you might wonder why in the world I want to talk about redemption again. Well, the reason why is because this morning I'm listening to the radio on my way to a construction site visit. Obviously, I've got some extra time. I got too close to the construction site a good bit, half an hour before I was supposed to. So I decided to go stop in a park. But while I was listening to the radio, I was listening to Glenn Beck. And if you're not familiar with Glenn Beck, he is a really fascinating radio talk show host. A lot of people don't like him. I personally really enjoy his show. Not necessarily do I agree with everything that he says, but one of the things that I love about Glenn Beck is that he really understands the concept of redemption. And here's the thing, that makes sense. He himself, he is a very flawed individual. He has had many, many failures and many personal failings in the past. And one of the things that we see very often in this modern era is this cancel culture. The cancel culture is real. I mean, I'm always amazed when people try to say that it's not real, but there is actually a legitimate effort on the part of leftists to destroy and cancel anybody who runs afoul of their politically correct ideology. And I say their politically correct ideology as in it better be correct with them. And it can't even just be correct with them at one time. No, it has to be correct with them at this time. So that means if you screwed up at any time, if you ever ran afoul, even if it was something like Kevin Hart back about 10 years ago, making, seemingly homophobic jokes, and now the left, and this is an old story from about a year ago, but the left was up in arms when he was going to host an awards show, and they resurfaced all these tweets and all these jokes from his past 10 years prior, back when pretty much most of society was a bit more homophobic. It's like, how is that fair to Kevin Hart, who obviously he's gone through a change of heart over time as well, and this is assuming that the current leftist ideology on what's acceptable within the LGBT discussions is necessarily correct right now. How are we supposed to know if that is the argument that in the future isn't going to be deemed bigoted? So they're trying to cancel people. They're even trying to cancel people like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. And so this morning, Glenn Beck, he breaks down Joe Robinette Biden's ancestry. And I have to say, it brought a smile to my face listening to Glenn Beck's descriptions of Joe Biden's ancestry. Why? Because here you have the left trying to cancel Trump over his supposed racism. They are trying to make him look like the white supremacist, like the one who is aiming at, getting rid of the Mexicans and stuff like that. I mean, they're trying to paint, Donald Trump as this horrible, bigoted, racist person. And yet, they're not looking at Joe Biden and his own past of working with segregationists and being racist. And you look at Joe Biden's ancestry, his ancestors owned slaves and quite proudly owned slaves, and they refused to give up the slaves until they were forced to at the time of the Civil War. Whereas at least George Washington granted his slaves freedom upon his death. And he also treated them like family. In fact, George Washington actually granted land to his newly freed black brothers, because he considered them to be brothers. Even though he owned them as slaves during his lifetime, he treated them like family and gave them an inheritance as he freed them. How many how many racists do you know that give black people land? Well, you know the answer very well. So, if we're going to try to cancel George Washington over owning slaves at one time in his life, if we're going to try to cancel Donald Trump because supposedly his dad engaged in some racist conduct, supposedly, it's not 100% sure what exactly he did, and there was no criminal charges ever brought. There was never any evidence that was sufficient to actually indicate that he was violating the equal rights of blacks in terms of housing. But there were accusations. If we're going to cancel them, if we're going to cancel Donald Trump, if we're going to cancel everybody who has ever said anything wrong, then we need to cancel the whole freaking planet. All right? Joe Biden definitely deserves to be canceled under the left's own rules. And here's the interesting thing, is Glenn Beck actually said exactly what I feel too. That Joe Biden's ancestry does not define who he is. Because, like Glenn Beck, I too am also a Christian. And I understand the concept of redemption. I understand that the sins of the Father do not rest upon the Son. That means, had Adolf Hitler had any children, his children would not be guilty of their father's sins. Oh, clutching pearls time. Oh, but how dare you say that? Because the sins of the father do not rest upon the child. It is a horribly unholy act to deny the grace of God and to deny the redemption of Jesus Christ to any person based on their ancestry. So you want to know why I've been so up in arms about these horrible, evil leftists who have been talking about white fragility and how, white privilege, and this stuff like, okay, because I'm born white, that somehow I'm automatically racist without me even trying. It's because I'm born a racist as a white man. It's not only horribly offensive to me personally, but it's also very offensive to the very concept of redemption and the grace of God. Because God loves all of his children. Yes, that's right. All lives matter. Let me repeat that again for any idiots out there that do not understand this concept. God loves all of his children. That means all lives matter. Not just black lives, not just white lives. So let's get back to Joe Biden. No, he is not guilty for the sins of his ancestors, even though they owned slaves, even though his own history was one of working with segregationists. I don't hold that against him, because even Joe Biden today is not Joe Biden from 47 years ago. Now, is the left going to give that kind of grace, that kind of forgiveness to Donald Trump? I doubt it. And remember, this is coming from a guy who voted against Donald Trump in 2016. I did not like him. I thought he was a horrible person. But then I saw the fruits of his labors as president. I saw what he did in the White House. I've seen how he has been fighting for equal justice. He's been fighting for peace. He's gotten a peace deal in the Middle East, which is a truly historic one, considering that he got countries that had never, ever recognized Israel as a country. And he got them to recognize them as a country, and even got them to play the Israeli national anthem at the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. That is incredible for an Arab country to be playing the Israeli national anthem. His own grandchildren are Jewish. So he is obviously not a Nazi. In fact, it just boggles my mind that the left keeps on trying to throw that one out. They keep trying to throw that trope out like, oh, Donald Trump is some kind of nonsense. Donald Trump's many things, but he is definitely not a racist. He's definitely not a Nazi. So that boggles my mind. There's so many things that I see that Donald Trump's done, like, for example, lowering the taxes. That actually literally saved so many Americans money. They actually had more money in their pockets thanks to that tax cut. And I'm talking across the board, all the way down to the poorest of the poor. If you had kids, you automatically got a tax cut and an increase in the amount that you got back as a refund. And I've already talked about that. I mean, there's so many things that he did that have been good things for this country. And yet the left, all they can sit there and talk about is, oh, Trump colluded with Russia. And it's like, okay, well, where's your proof? Oh, that's right. Oh, it was actually Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama who colluded with Russia and Ukraine to bring about a false dossier to try to trick the American public into thinking that Donald Trump had anything to do with collusion with Russia. In fact, the prostitutes peeing on the bed in the hotel in Moscow with Donald Trump watching, that was also a fake dossier. It was false. However, the left keeps using that trope. They keep saying it as though it's going to make it true if they say it enough times. It's like, oh, it's kind of like that superstition where on the first of a month, when the first words out of your mouth when you wake up are rabbit, rabbit, it's supposed to give you good luck for that whole month. Yeah, sure. Yes, keep on believing that superstition. Good. So, again, I want to reiterate. I want to believe in redemption. Because I, too, I'm a flawed man. And I'm sure all of you are also flawed individuals. After all, if you were perfect, you probably wouldn't be long for this earth, because the rest of us would have killed you. Because that's what typically happens. If somebody is too righteous, they get destroyed by all the wicked people. We are a very wicked bunch of people on this planet. But we're trying. I think most people are trying to be good. We screw it up all the time. But we're trying to be good. And frankly, that's why I believe in the redemption of Jesus Christ. Because I need it. You need it. And I think our politics need it. we all need to relax and breathe and recognize that it's okay to have disagreements. It's okay to have policy disagreements. And ultimately, it's okay if you want to vote for Joe Biden because you think he's the right man for the job. Great. Personally, right now, between the two, I see Donald Trump as aligning closer with the direction that I want the country to go in, policy-wise. No, I said policy-wise. I still don't find his behavior the greatest, but at the same time, what are my choices? I can vote for a person who makes me cringe when they write tweets on Twitter, but yet I like what he's doing policy-wise. I like what he's doing in his governance. Or I can vote for a man who has constantly been an empty suit his whole entire life. He's constantly just been trying to say the right things to get elected. And in the end, we don't really know what Joe Biden's policies are. He's even said that he's going to, to find out his position on packing the courts, we have to elect him to find out. I mean, that recalls Nancy Pelosi back in 2009 when asked about the stimulus bill, and she's asked what's in the stimulus bill, and she says, "Well, we'll have to pass it so that you can find out what's in it." And it's like, no, that's not the way it works. You're supposed to be able to inspect the goods before you purchase them. Just saying. And right now, Joe Biden's trying to say, "Oh, you'll find out what my positions are once you elect me." And it's like, there's not a chance in hell I'd vote for you, Joe. You're a freaking moron. But I forgive you for your ancestors owning slaves. And with that, I leave you again for another day. I'm the colorblind architect. Peace out.